everyone. Thank you. I know this was very last minute, but we are so glad that so many of you could come. And as I said before, we're streaming this, and we'll have the archive on our website and on our YouTube page later today. Rabbi Boteach is telling his social media person that we're streaming it so they can let them know also. Sharon and I first had the privilege of learning with Rabbi Boteach in Los Angeles. He was doing a lecture in the Orthodox community in what we call the Chud in Los Angeles, which is the Pico Robertson area. And we were able to go and listen to him. And of course, we've heard him, as many of you have, I'm sure, on media and on radio and television. And then I was fortunate to have Rabbi Boteach come and speak to my men's retreat, my annual men's retreat that I was doing in Los Angeles in my previous congregation, on his book, The Broken American Male? Yes. And he was phenomenal. And everybody still talks, but we've had lots of scholars there, and everybody still talks about the time with Rabbi Boteach was by far the best. So when I heard that he was going to be in town, I still had all the old emails from that, including his personal email and his cell phone number, which I don't know if he knew I had. So I started harassing him right before Christmas, when Sharon and I were on break, to see if we could get him to come here as well. And in great appreciation to Congregation Harel that has brought him in for this weekend and agreed to share him with us. Sharon and I are so pleased to have Rabbi Boteach with us for this wonderful conversation. As you know, I'm going to be teaching our bar mitzvah kids during most of this, but Sharon will be here. So if you need anything, I guess ask Sharon. Anyhow, Rabbi, please.
How about a latte?
A latte. Well, I'll get right on that. I was ordained to serve. So, ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach.
Good morning.
Just unmute your mic.
Test. Okay, yeah, that worked. Good, okay. Good morning, good morning. I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm going to have us all bunched together. Everyone showered this morning. Let's get a little bit closer. If it's a smaller group, then why not make it more intimate and have it become more of a conversation, since the title is 10 Conversations. You have no fear if you have plans this afternoon. I'm going to go through all 10 conversations you need to have with your children. And each conversation we're going to keep down to only 90 minutes. So you will be home in time for dinner. You didn't tell your community that this is like the retreat I did, but this is a retreat. It's not just a lecture. But great.
All done.
Thank you. Oh, your rabbi's a social media expert. Good stuff. Okay, who here has children? Who has children? Okay. Who believes it was a mistake? Raise your hand.
Once in a while.
So I am the proud father, thank God, of 9 children. And I'm a child of divorce. My parents divorced when I was about 8. So I've always wondered to myself, what is the secret of keeping a family together? What is the secret of sustaining the passion and erotic connection between a man and a woman under the same roof for the duration of their lives? So they don't just remain together because of external considerations. Even children. Our children are not our captives. They're not our jailers. You don't stay married because you have kids. Or the mortgage, or even shared values. You're supposed to stay married because you have this erotic desire to be with someone, and it's electrifying and it's exciting. I gave a lecture about that last night and became forever banned from the JCC. It was a little bit humiliating when security guards were holding me off in the middle of my lecture. I didn't appreciate it. I felt it was a little bit extreme. Today we're going to go to the opposite side of the family. how to raise well-balanced, motivated, and above all else, purposeful children. Children who are inspired, motivated to actually do something unique with their lives, to develop their fullest human potential. And the two are connected. They're interrelated. If you have a troubled marriage, you are often going to raise troubled children, not just because of the trauma in the family and the toxicity in the family, but for a different reason altogether. A number of years ago, when I was hosting my show Shalom in the Home on TLC, and I'm very happy to announce that we're doing a variation of Shalom in the Home for Canadian TV. I'm going to Toronto to begin filming it next week, God willing. What's it called? It's called Here's Shmuley. Catchy title, huh? Now, right now, the tentative title is Family Fix. It's not a title I chose. It's okay. It kind of captures what the show is, but I wanted something a little bit edgier. If anyone can think of something, you will win a free copy of one of the books I can't sell.
Do you want alliteration? Is that
Well, the network chose the title. Even Shalom in the Home I didn't choose.
I like that.
Yeah, I thought Shalom in the Home was a mistake because it was almost like Jew squared. You have a rabbi who's already the host and give it the super Jewish title. So people in Kansas are looking at the show thinking, okay, is this in a synagogue? But it was a catchy title. Who here watched Shalom in the Home? Anyone watch Shalom in the Home? Okay. So for all of you people who did not watch it, thank you for getting me canceled. Shalom in the Home was actually a much bigger success in Canada than it was in the United States. It was huge in Canada. I still don't know why. Maybe because Canadians have no problems in their families at all. They just like seeing American dysfunction. It made them feel better about themselves. Oh, those damn Americans, they think they're so special. Look at their kids, ah. I knew how big Shalom in the Home was in Canada, actually. It's a strange story that I wasn't planning to tell this morning, but I'm blessed to have a unique relationship with Elie Wiesel, who is the greatest living Jewish personality, and this goes all the way back 25 years when he first started speaking for me when I was the rabbi at Oxford University in England, and we've become very dear friends. He's a mentor to me, and beyond being the face of the Holocaust, conscience of the Jewish people. So I brought him to speak in Utah for the Mormon Church, and a friend lent us a plane to take him out there. And on the way back, we stopped in Toronto, and he spoke at the University of Toronto Hillel. And we were waiting at the airport at the end of the speech to get him back to New York that night. And customs closes these private airports at like midnight. So we're waiting on the plane. They bring him in the car. He sits down, and the Canadian border official walks into this little tiny plane, and he goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." And I'm thinking, wow, he's Elie Wiesel. He said, "I can't believe that you're on this plane. What an honor. Rabbi Shmuley." So I looked at Elie Wiesel, I said, that doesn't happen in the States. It only happened in Canada. Anyway. The two are connected. Unhappy marriages and dysfunctional children, for one simple reason. So when I was hosting Shalom in the Home, one of the shows that we did, if you may recall, was a 9-year-old girl from New Jersey who we called, because her parents called her, Devil Child. She was screaming and yelling, abusing her parents with 4-letter words nonstop. And what we were able to show the parents is that they thought that she was possessed by Beelzebub, but really that she had learned all of this abuse from her parents. We filmed them and showed how much the father abused the mother and how much she abused him in return, and she just absorbed this. Our children don't listen to us, they copy us. They mimic us, they ape us. Well, Oprah saw that show and invited us onto her show to talk about it. It was the second time I was on her show discussing one of our episodes. Oprah's always been very interested in why so many American kids are so badly behaved. So on the show, she says to me, and the mother of the daughter is there, and the mother of the child is there, she says, "Shmuley, why do you think there are so many badly behaved American kids?" And then she said something very confessional. She said, "I don't have children. And one of the reasons is I was always afraid that I would not raise them properly. I think it's life's foremost responsibility. I didn't want to fail at it." Well, that's quite a thing to say. Oprah's famous for in the Leadership Academy in South Africa, who she considers herself a mother to these children. South African girls who were there, no iPods, no television, nothing electronic. It's barred, it's banned from the school. So she asked me, is it the noise? Is it all the electronics? Why are kids so badly behaved? I said, actually, Oprah, the reason is bad marriages. If you don't get love from your spouse, the only thing left to you is to get it from your children. And once you're dependent on your kids for basic affection, there's no way you're going to punish them. Because then you're going to cut off the only route you have left for affection. You don't bite the hand that feeds you. So when you're in a strong marriage and your principal affection comes from your spouse, which is the way it's supposed to be, it's the natural order of things, then you have no problem telling your kid, you're punished, you're going to bed early, and no matter how much they scream and say, I hate you, it doesn't bother you. You're not weak, you're strong. But when you're weak and vulnerable because you feel lonely, and your child is the one you snuggle up with and cuddle up, and they can use that against you, knowing that they have that power, you're not going to discipline the child. So happy marriages and disciplined kids go hand in hand. And we don't have strong marriages today. But then I added something else on the same show. I said, that's the first reason. The second reason is, we parents have learned today to parent with our hands rather than with our mouths. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean corporal punishment, that we slap our child, although some people employ that as well. I mean that we give things to our children or take them away. We use reward and punishment constantly as the principal means by which to raise our kids. So if they're good, we give them things or take them places. And if they're bad, we give them a timeout. We have forgotten how to parent with speech, how to inspire them, how to reach their innermost self through motivational conversation, by speaking from our hearts, by touching them deeply and awakening their own desire as to what they want to be. Let me give you an example of what I mean and why I wrote this book, 10 Conversations You Need to Have with Your Children, which incidentally was launched on Oprah's show. A number of years ago, a friend of mine calls me up and he says to me, there's a British show that they're importing into the United States called Help, I'm a Terrible Parent. And they want you to audition to be the host. And I said, forget it, I'm not even going. Every time because I had auditioned, because I write books on relationships, 1,000 production companies and networks had asked me to try out for shows. And each time it was the same thing. Well, can he sell in Texas? Can he sell in Nebraska? Not just because I'm a rabbi, but because there has been no mainstream, there's been no religious figure hosting a primetime television show in the United States, not one, from the time of Bishop Fulton Sheen in the 1950s. Think about it, not one. I mean, there's people like, help me here, there's Joel Osteen, there's a lot of very famous pastors who buy their time on a Sunday morning, and they have huge followings. But in terms of networks putting people on in prime time, America's a very religious country, very religious, but it still compartmentalizes between its entertainment and between its spirituality. So I said, I'm not wasting my time, I'm not even going. He said, come on, Shmuley, it's a couple of hours. I said, I'm not going. It's a humiliating process, I'm not going. He said to me, okay. Calls back a week later and says, I spoke to your assistant, and she says you're taking the red-eye back from Los Angeles. You're going to arrive 5 in the morning, this and this date. Let's do it as a breakfast thing. We'll take you to a family that's having a lot of problems, not far from you in New Jersey. And what are you going to do those hours? You're arriving 5 in the morning. So I said, okay, that I'll agree to. They pick me up from the airport. They take me to a family where the problem is that there's a woman who's divorced, remarried. She has 2 children, a 16-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. And he brought one child into the marriage, and the 16-year-old daughter hates her stepfather, despises him. And she's ruining the new marriage. They're on the verge of the divorce because the mother feels she has to choose between the happiness of her daughter and the happiness of her new marriage. And the way Shalom of the Home works, if you saw it, is I'm in this RV watching the family on closed circuit televisions, trying to deduce the dysfunctional nature of the family and how I might fix it. And I'm watching this mother do everything in the morning. She's frying bacon and eggs, and she's serving her 16-year-old daughter who's sitting there painting her toenails, literally. And then the mother cleans up her plate and throws out the garbage, and the daughter does precisely nothing. I had had enough. I didn't want to be there. I was tired. I hadn't slept the whole night. I go and I knock on the door of the teenage daughter. Now, you all know, you don't just walk into a teenager's room. God forbid. Even if you're the parent, even if you're paying the rent, you have to like sit and ask for permission. Oh, honey child, may I please enter your domicile, which I am funding. Go away! Okay, sorry. Forgive me. Please. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. So I knock and I request entry of the princess. And she says, granted. She said, I don't want you here. I don't know what you're doing here. I said, you know, I don't want to be here either. So I have a deal. I'll ask you one question, and if you answer it, I'll leave. She said, okay, deal. I sit down on the chair in her room, and I say to her, you're 16. When you get older, who do you want to be? And she says, I want to go to FIT, the Fashion Institute of Technology in Manhattan, and I want to be a fashion designer. I said to her, but that's not what I asked. I didn't ask you, what do you want to do? I asked you, who do you want to be? She said, I'm confused by the question. I said, oh, it's simple. To the question of what do you want to do, there's a million answers. You could be an astronaut, you could be a fighter pilot, you could be a veterinarian, you could be a fashion model, you could be a seamstress, whatever you want. But to the question of who do you want to be, there's only two answers. She said, what are they? I said, you could be a good person, or you could be a bad person. That's it. She said, well, that's simple. I want to be a good person. I said, really? She said, definitely. I said, are you certain? She said, 1,000%. I said, are you absolutely sure? She said, of course. Why are you driving me crazy? I said, just tell me you're absolutely sure that that's the answer to the question. You want to be a good person. I'm certain I want to be a good person. And I looked her in the eye, and I said to her, I'm going to go now, but I want you to just think about what you said. You tell me that you want to be a good person, and yet I just watched you turn your mother into your cleaner, your maid, your servant. And then I turned around and I walked out. And she chased me, and she now had tears streaming down her cheeks, and she said to me, how do I become a good person? So I said to her, I'm a child of divorce too. You become a good person when your mother remarries and finally finds love and doesn't just cry herself to sleep at night, thinking she's going to be by herself forever. By supporting her in this relationship, even though it takes a little bit of her away from you, I understand that. My mother's with someone as well. I get it. It hurts to have to bring a stranger into the home. But you put some of your own selfishness aside, and you're happy for her, and you support the relationship, and you make her smile more. You become a good person by being a blessing to others rather than a burden. Now just think about this story for a moment. It's a very simple story. There's no profound truths in it. I didn't teach her the secret of E equals MC squared. I didn't solve the contradiction between quantum mechanics and relativity. I simply helped her hear her own inner voice. She always had an inner voice that told her she wanted to be a better person. But it was being drowned out by her pain as to her parents' divorce, her pain in feeling rejected by a mother who was now being shared with this guy. It was being drowned out by all the modern noise, quite literally the noise that's in our teenagers' ears day and night through iPod earbuds, or the noise of the fashion industry, or the noise of the celebrity industry, or the noise of Wall Street, or all these things that are foreign voices telling us who we're supposed to be. And we never get to hear our inner voice. All I did in that short conversation was help this young woman attune herself, get on the same frequency of her own inner voice. Now, why is that effective? The least effective form of parenting is where you impose your will on a child. You can do it through three things that ultimately fail. You can do it through coercion. You can do it through, here's the Jewish way, damn good, guilt. After all I do for you, after all I've given up, after all I've suffered just to have you. You could do it through coercion. You can impose your will on your child through coercion, guilt, or bribery. You can bribe them, especially once they go to college and they're dirt poor. You could even get them to call you once a week and pretend they want to speak to you until the killer, the last 15 seconds of the conversation. And by the way, Mom, if you don't mind that transfer into my account, you can do that. It's very ineffective parenting, and it wears off. Imposing your will on your child, which is what most of us try to do. We try to impose our values on our children for their own benefit. It doesn't work. It never works. Or we can help our children discover what it is that they want, what they truly want, what they deeply want. Not what we want for them, but what they want for themselves. That's effective parenting. And that's the purpose of the 10 conversations you have with your children. It's not to preach to them. It's not to lecture them. It's to help them hear their own inner voice. So this young woman was hearing that voice. She did want to be a better person. And I could have used a different tactic. And that's what most parents do. Why was her mother being ineffective? She wasn't helping around the house. She was being a slob and being totally self-centered, because her mother's lectures usually were the kind of lectures that we parents give our children. You walk into the room and say, this room's a pigsty. You're not going anywhere with your friends until it's done. I am imposing my desire for cleanliness upon you. Well, she doesn't want to be clean. They'll do it just to go out with their friends, but you haven't changed them at all. What I did was frame the conversation not in terms of cleanliness, which is ultimately a subordinate issue. I framed it in terms of some of the great moral themes of life. Are you a good person or a bad person? Because everybody wants to be good. This is a radical departure from Christianity. Christianity says we're born in sin, original sin. So most of us Jews define our Judaism in terms of whatever Christianity isn't, Judaism therefore is. So if they believe that people are born bad or sinful, so we believe people are born good. A lot of Jews live with this illusion. It says nowhere in any Jewish text that people are born good. They're not. Rather, people are born innocent. They're neither good nor bad. They're a blank slate. Their actions will determine what they become. But people are born with a desire to be good. They have a godly spark that inclines them towards philanthropy, generosity, but we have to cultivate that spark. That's our job as parents, not to impose our will on them, but to cultivate that existing inclination to altruism. And that's how we raise special children. Any questions until now? Okay, is that better? Thank you very much. Yes, please.
So, if you ask, I'm thinking of my two boys who are 11 and almost 13, and part of would be maybe defiance, but I think if I were to ask them that question, they might say, well, I don't care. Because they know that what's leading to the answer of I want to be good is, well, then this is what we should think about doing. So I can still see getting into that kind of friction with them in terms of imposing what my values are on them by them wanting.
That's why the only thing that's going to work with your kids is coercion. Screw everything I said. Just force them. No, that's a very fair point. I'm not saying this is going to work the first time. I had the advantage with this young woman of the dramatic flair. There were television cameras filming us. I was a new person. She knew she could get rid of me if she answered me. I had all of those things going for me. You're the same face they wake up to every morning. We badger our kids. We hector our kids. They tune us out. Sometimes it takes a few conversations, but you have to choose your time. I got this idea. 10 Conversations You Need to Have with Your Children was a book that I wrote while doing Shalom in the Home, where I began to see, if you watch the show, that conversations were really effective. And I was having them with my kids, but I wasn't having them when they needed to clean. Every night, I sat down with my children and we studied a little bit of the Torah, usually the Torah portion of the week, 10, 15 minutes. And we were able to extract from the Torah reading some of the great themes of life, because the Torah really lends itself to an endless spring, a well of the great themes of life. And that allowed me to use it as a springboard to talk about these things. And then I said to myself, are there conversations I keep on coming back to? And then I identified these 10, and then I decided to write it up. And then interestingly, the way I wrote the book was, I actually taped some of the conversations I had with my kids. I told them I'm going to tape them now. And I then edited and wrote, I wanted to have a conversational feel. And of all the 30 books I've written a few on child rearing, this has been by far the most successful. It continues to sell all over the world, thank God. Been many television shows made about it, because people don't ever think about using conversations with their children. So I'm not saying do it, have that conversation specifically when your child wants to go out and their room's a mess. I'm talking about choosing your moments. Sometimes it's at the dinner table, but learning how to inspire people through communication. You know, we diminish the power of conversation. Martin Luther King changed. I'm an American, and I love my country deeply, very much. But I can't ignore the fundamental contradiction that existed in American democracy between a country that speaks about the land of the free and the home of the brave, that wouldn't allow a black kid kicking a soccer ball who was dripping sweat in the South to drink from a water fountain. I mean, there was a profound contradiction in that. And one man largely changed that. And that's why you should definitely see the movie Selma, which is excellent. But he did it with no title. He was not a senator, he was not a congressman, he was not a president. He did it through conversations, through lectures, through speeches. It's remarkable that he changed the country by touching America's true soul and telling people who they really want. Did you really want to be a bunch of racists? Does that make you feel better about yourself? Isn't this a little bit embarrassing? Is this who you want to be? So we can't underestimate, and a lot of people say, oh, well, Rabbi Shmuley, you're a professional communicator. This is what you do for a living, so you know how to talk to your kids. It's not true. Real conversations come from the heart. You know the famous story of Dale Carnegie, who wrote the biggest bestseller of the 20th century, aside from the Bible, How to Win Friends and Influence People, where incidentally he said the best way to win people over to your side is to convince them you believe they're good, because more than wanting to be successful or smart, people want to be good, and they want to be acknowledged as good. But he used to have these seminars in New York City where he'd teach people public speaking. And there's a story that once, he says, it was at the Waldorf Astoria, I don't know, 1,000 people paying a lot of money. And he says, I'm going to choose one of you to come up and give a speech. And he looks for the most timid man. The guy is like shaking, don't pick me, don't pick me. And he picks him, makes him come up. And says to the guy, give a speech about the state of the economy or politics, anything that's on your heart. And the man is he's shivering and he's quaking and he can't even speak. And he says, just let it flow. And the man's getting more upset. He says, just, we're all waiting and you're just keeping everybody, give a speech. And finally the man, he's stuttering, he can't even utter a word. He looks at Dale Carnegie and he says to him, how dare you humiliate me in front of all these people? I paid you to come and learn how to speak. And now you drag me up in front of all these people and you humiliate me further by coercing and pressuring me. I am disgusted. I thought you were a good man. I looked up to you. I am never going. And Dale Carnegie goes, great speech. And that was the point. This man thought a speech is where you think. A speech is where he felt it. He was damn angry. He was righteous indignation, and he gave a great speech. If you really care about your children, you will find the words to impress upon them your values, their values. But you've got to choose the right time and the right place, and it does work. So let me give you some ideas of the great themes, the great conversations we're supposed to have with our children. Here's the first, and I alluded to it before. Be a blessing and never a burden. So many families today are rendered dysfunctional by having one member of the family becoming a burden. They're a complainer, they're always late, they procrastinate, they don't help out, they're angry, and it creates a burden on the entire family. The purpose of this conversation is to reach a child in that deep place where he or she always feels good about themselves, when they are a blessing to others, when they uplift people, when they... So, when we were hosting Shalom of the Home, I was asked to go down to Orlando, Florida, to help a woman named Carolyn, who was a widow, 36 years old, beautiful, an architect. She had gone out to dinner with her husband in his gorgeous Corvette in Orlando for Valentine's Day. And on the way back, they were cut off the road. The Corvette went right into a lamppost, and he was killed instantly. And he bled to death from his head in her lap while they waited for the ambulance. She could not overcome her morbidity. She took the bloody dress and she put it under her bed. Then she put all these black and white somber pictures of her husband all over the house, and she was just telling her daughters, 8 and 6, this is your father, and the father looked like he walked out of some horror movie. And the purpose of the film, every episode was a different theme. The theme here was, how do you overcome grief? It was 6 years later, and she still couldn't overcome it at all. Anyone see that show? So this is what I said to her. After seeing, and she would show them videos, and she would tell her daughters, this was your father, we'll never find any like him. We'll never get past this. He was so special, he's lost to us. I sat with her and I said to her, Carolyn, on the last day of his life, Moses looks to the Jewish people, knowing that he only has a few hours left on this earth, and he says to them, here is my most important teaching. Every day of your life, you will be confronted with a choice of life and a choice of death. Sometimes it's quite literal. You got to be very careful when you drive safely to safeguard your life and not, God forbid, bring about death. But sometimes it's more subtle. You have a friend for 10 years, you had a fight. Will you let the relationship go and be stubborn and choose death? Or will you apologize and choose life? Will you compliment someone and make them feel more alive? Or will you criticize them and make them feel like they're so ordinary and more dead? You deaden them to life because they feel abused. And Moses commanded the Jewish people in the book of Deuteronomy, today I place before you life and death, and heaven and earth are witnesses to this choice, and I command you to always choose life. I said, Carolyn, you always chose life. You chose a husband. You chose to give birth to life. But then one day, death chose you. And it barged into your home like an invader. It just broke through the front door and it stole your husband from you. There was nothing you could do about that, but then you made a tragic mistake. You invited death to come and reside among you as an honored guest. You asked him to stay. You chose death. And now you're imparting that to your children. You're telling them that their lives are basically over, that their lives are all about experiencing loss. When that commandment still applies, you have to choose life. She said, how? How do I choose life? I said, number one, we're going to go and we're going to change all the pictures in this house from these black and white to colorful pictures of their father playing with them. That's how they have to remember him, that he used to smile. His life, he didn't just die. That wasn't the only thing he did. He lived. That's what they have to focus on. I said, number two, what did your husband really believe in? What did he do? What was his most important value? She said, he was unique in that he always honored the elderly. He was very good to his grandparents. He had a lot of time for older people. Orlando can be a bit of a retirement community. No offense to Disney. And so I said to her, every Friday when they come home from school, you're going to take your children to a home for the elderly, and they're going to give out sweets, and they're going to give out little, tiny, small gifts to the people there who don't get visited by their grandchildren. And you're going to tell your daughters, we're doing this in the memory of your father who would have done the same. They're going to live on in their actions with him. Now think about that. Here are these children who are burdened with the death of a father, and all they can think about is loss, is loss. And now they've transformed that tragedy into something life-affirming. We ended the show by taking balloons and putting little notes in the balloons that they wrote to their father in heaven. And then they let the balloons go so that their father can read them where he is with God in heaven. Those children today they're teenagers now. They're beautiful young girls. You don't ever fully overcome the death of a parent, God forbid. But it's become a blessing rather than just a burden. And that's what we Jews are good at. We're excellent at transforming tragedy into a blessing because we've been forced to, and we've learned how to do so. We turned the Holocaust, no greater burden than that, no greater tragedy than that, into the blessing of the state of Israel. Children need to be told that any pain they suffer, and children today are in a lot of pain, it has to be turned into a blessing. They have to utilize whatever they're feeling to become more sensitive. to the burden and pain of others. I was with my children on an RV trip in the Deep South doing my radio show. They equipped this RV so it could be a radio studio. So it was great. We did this vacation. I wanted to do city to city. And 3 hours every day, middle of the day when I had to do my radio show, my wife would take the kids walking and I would do my show out of this RV, mobile studio. We come to New Orleans 3 weeks before Hurricane Katrina. And we're walking at midnight through Jackson Square, which is so beautiful. It's bathed in this bluish neon light, and you see the statue of Andrew Jackson and this beautiful church that dominates the square. And then suddenly there's a homeless man, a Vietnam vet, still wearing army fatigues, and he's holding like a bottle in a brown paper bag. And he says to me, "Hey, excuse me, sir, can you spare some change?" So my kids are with me, my wife's with me. I walk over to him, I say to him, I pull out $2 and I put it in his hand and I say to him, "You're too beautiful a person to destroy your life through alcohol. Promise me you're not going to use this for anything but food." He said, "I promise." I said, No, but you really have to promise." He said, "I promise." I said, "Well, God bless you, sir." He said, "Well, God bless you too, sir. God bless you, God bless your family." And we continued to walk. A few blocks later, my eldest daughter, who today is 25 and at the time was, 17, 18, turns to me and says to me, "Tati, are you a fool? He's going straight to the liquor store. He's sitting there holding the alcohol in his hand. Why did you give that to him?" I looked at my daughter and I said to her, "Baby girl, I gave him that money because it was the best deal I did the whole day." I said, "Do you know why that man is sitting there like that? It's because once upon a time, someone robbed him of his dignity, or life robbed him of his dignity, and he feels absolutely worthless. He's a nothing. So he drinks away all of his pain through booze and alcohol. And the only thing left to him, the only little morsel of dignity left to him, is that when he's on the street, someone actually sees him. But if I pretend that he's invisible, I have robbed him of the last tiny morsel of human dignity. He doesn't even exist. And for $2, I bought that man his dignity." What a great deal that was. There is no greater deal than that. So what do you think I did? Save the world for $2? All I can do is try to impart an inspirational message to him, very briefly, give him his dignity, and move on. A few days later, we were in Vicksburg, Mississippi, a famous stronghold of the Confederacy that was taken by Ulysses S. Grant. I wanted to do a radio show from there. Drove the RV, parked it. The kids have to go for 3 hours. I gave them each $5, $10 to go and spend. They come back 3 hours later, and my second oldest daughter says to me, you won't believe what happened with Mushki." She says, my eldest daughter, she said, "We were walking and we see this guy asking for money on the street. So Mushki walks over and says to him, 'Sir, you're too special to use this money on alcohol. Promise me if I give you this $5, she gave him $5, that you're going to go and buy food.' And then she said, 'God bless you, sir. Be a blessing, never a burden.'" Now, why did my daughter do that? Because I had changed her, because I inspired her? Because she saw for almost nothing at all, for no gesture at all, you can make someone feel like they matter. And she felt good about herself being a blessing and not a burden. A few days later, she's a bit of a burden. She's complaining. "Why did you do that? And now it had so transformed itself that without my even being present, she was doing these good things, not just because she had seen me do it, but because I had explained it to her. I had shared with her my values, and they accorded with her own values. Because she knew what it was like in class when, if you're not the most popular girl, that someone makes you feel like you don't matter, that they overlook you. Be a blessing and never a burden. Which leads us to another conversation. Do you ever ask yourself how it's possible that we are the most educated generation in the history of the world and also the stupidest? We are so dumb, it's unbelievable. Jay Leno used to make his living as the host of The Tonight Show by going on the streets of Los Angeles and exposing the absolute abysmal ignorance of the average American walking down the street with a college degree. He would say, "Who killed Lincoln?" And the person would say, "You mean he's dead?" Abysmal ignorance. It's unbelievable how stupid we are for all our college degrees, high school degrees. How is that possible? How could you study so much and know so little? It's simple. Our educational system today is not geared toward intellectual discovery. It's not there to open our minds and awaken a desire to know. It is rather there to get us a job, to get us a career. It's entirely functional. So you need to know just enough to get that great job, but it doesn't awaken any deep desire to know. So the second conversation is, all I want to know is that you want to know. All I want to know is that you want to know. We have to get our children away from becoming circus monkeys designed to perform and get A's in order to make us proud into children who have a genuine quest for knowledge. So one day I get a phone call from my daughter was in high school. I get a call from the Spanish teacher, and he says, your daughter was disruptive in class today. She really made it difficult for me to teach. She wasn't paying attention. And I'm calling you because you should know. I wait for my daughter to come home. We have dinner. I don't say anything. Get through the whole dinner. I'm still quiet. When dinner's over, I say, "Sterny, you got to come into my office." She gives me that look like, I know exactly what you want. She's a bit reluctant. I said, "Sterny, you got to come now." We go into my office. I close the door. And she says, "Tati, I know why you're calling me in your office. You want to punish me because of what my Spanish teacher said today. But Tati, he is a liar." "Tati, he is evil. We actually saw a demon and a dibuk inhabit his body during one class. He's got like a 666 tattooed all over his head." I said to her, "Are you a mind reader? Are you a prophet? You know why I called you into my office? You have no idea, so stop guessing." And I said to her, "I called you into my office because I wanted to tell you that I love you, because I don't say it enough. I wanted to tell you that I love you and I'm always there for you. And I couldn't care less how well you do in your Spanish class. Couldn't care less. Neither do I care what your Spanish teacher thinks of you. You're going to know him for a year, and hopefully you'll stay in touch a bit thanking him for teaching you, but he's not going to be a central presence in your life in all likelihood. Why would I care? I called you into my office because I'm amazed that you don't want to learn how to speak Spanish. I couldn't care less about your stupid teacher. Well, why would I care? His job is to teach, your job is to be a bit rebellious. You're doing your job. But I don't know why you don't want to know. That's what I need you to explain to me." I said to her, throughout my life, I've been so enamored by Latino culture. I grew up in Miami, surrounded by people who could speak Spanish, and I couldn't speak it. And they're the most passionate people in the whole world, and their language is almost like a song. Forget about the practical aspects that you could do more by being bilingual, trilingual. They say that being unilingual is a euphemism for American. We only speak one language. I said just to be able to find that richness of another culture, that's what this is about. This has nothing to do with impressing a teacher. Why would I care? I said, I'll tell you what, if you want to drop out of Spanish, I'm okay with that as well. If you want to learn it in some other way, you want to spend the summer going to a Spanish, if you work a bit and I'll match you dollar for dollar, you want to go to Mexico for the summer, you want to go to Latin America and pick up a language there, I'm okay with that as well. But all I want to know is that you want to know. This isn't about a grade, and this isn't about discipline. This is about a genuine desire to know. So I started all these quizzes at our dinner table with my children. I love history. And I give them little quizzes, especially on Shabbos, but also during the week. Yesterday we walked from the apartment we're staying at to that suspension bridge. And the whole way there, we play either geography, but here we played a different game. You had to, geography is the last letter, you have to start the next So if I say Paris, you have to say something with an S, like St. Petersburg. Here we did it with great historical figures, because my kids know that I love history. Someone said Netanyahu. If you start with a U, there is no one. Can anyone think of a great historical figure whose last name starts with a U? We all got out on that. Oh,
You're in the wrong crowd.
okay.
Canadian.
Okay, but Ulysses didn't exist.
You didn't indicate that stipulation.
Yeah, true. Okay. We couldn't think of a U. Anyway, it was supposed to be last names, then we changed the rules. The point is, we have to awaken a desire in our children to want to know. And that also means we have to actually answer our children's questions. Our 8-year-old came with us to see that new Matthew McConaughey movie about space and time. What's it called? Interstellar. Now, I didn't understand any of it. He understood even less. He was badgering me after. I don't understand. How did he go through time? And I was therefore forced, based on my absolutely infinitesimal understanding of relativity, to explain this thing to him. And then we showed him, and then he just saw that film about Stephen Hawking. And I hosted Stephen Hawking in Oxford years ago. I now have this 8-year-old, theory of everything, thank you. I now have this 8-year-old that's asking all these questions about is one thing relative to another, and I don't know where it's going to lead, but it's fascinating that you can open a child's mind just through curiosity rather than dismissing their questions as silly. Like, it's a dumb movie, what do you care? Well, if it's a dumb movie, why'd you take him there in the first place? You should take him to something that isn't a dumb movie. That'll open his mind a little bit. When I was close to a Michael Jackson, I was his rabbi, and you can read this in the book, Michael Jackson Tapes. We taped 30 hours of conversation for publication. I remember how often, what made Michael such a great artist? It was because he had a sense of wonder, a sense of awe. Everything in the world, he had a childlike sense of wonder. He used to call me up on the phone and say to me, Shmuley, Prince is asking me this question, why do clouds float? And I want to give him a good answer. I'm thinking, oh God, why do clouds float? What the hell? I said, I guess water vapor, a mist, they float. Let me Google it, I'll call you right back. He used to always call me with these questions that his son asked him. It was amazing. Famous guy, well-known guy. He could easily have said, because there's an angel in them. Now go back to, here, I'll buy you something. He used to call me all the time with these little questions. He'd say, it was such a good question. I myself want to know. This sense of awe and wonder. There's 3 ways to look at life. If you see like a beautiful mountaintop, there's 3 ways to approach it. I'm going to Whistler today, God willing, with our children. I love mountains. There's 3 ways to approach a beautiful mountain or a beautiful sunset or a snow-capped peak. The first is the practical. Wow, there's a beautiful mountain. How do I ski it? How do I derive pleasure from it? The second is exploitation. Wow, look at that mountain. How do I build a ski resort on it to become rich? Or how do I build a gondola to get people to pay? And then there's a third. My God, look at that mountain. How can I just stand back and behold? How can I be rendered insignificant in the face of its awe, its majesty, and its wonder? Now that's what children have. Children don't have the first, which is the practical, the pragmatic. They're impressed with a bug. They're impressed with a flower. They don't want to exploit things the way we adults do. They have this sense of awe, majesty, and wonder. Everything excites them. They ask us endless questions. And we stifle that awe. And then we make them as corrupt as we are, that everything in life exists to be used for our own benefit. What's the essence of environmentalism? I'm amazed that we actually have such a political divide as to whether we should preserve the environment or not. For me, it's not a question of carbon emissions. I love being out in nature. It's rather a sense of when Moses comes to the burning bush, God says to him, last week's Torah reading, take your shoes off. You're in a holy place. Once upon a time, nature evoked a sense of awe, majesty, and wonder. And there was the great Jewish mystics like Rabbi Isaac Luria, who founded modern Kabbalah. They would go out into nature to find and experience God. Now we go out and we see a tree and we see a walking piece of furniture. So it becomes a political divide that none of us can agree on. If we had reintroduced that sense of awe, majesty, and wonder, there would be no dispute. We would all feel, it's like there's no dispute about children. Why do we all agree that if a child is sexually exploited by someone, that it's barbarous, monstrous? There's no disagreement about child sexual exploitation. Or there's no disagreement that we shouldn't take kids to rated R movies. Well, why? Because we all accept that the innocence of a child is something holy. It's something precious. But we can't agree that when it comes to, I don't know, a tree. Now, a tree is not as special as a child. But there is something majestic in it, and there is something godly in it. But in our rush to exploit everything to our own needs, and by the way, it's destroying relationships as well. Why are 1 out of 5 women at university campuses facing sexual assault by men, which I spoke about a bit last night? Talk about the fall of Western civilization. God Almighty, that's one of the worst statistics I've ever heard. These are institutes of higher learning. This isn't happening through rape and pillage of some army conquering a city. You know, they say that the Russians raped 1 out of 3 German women in the wake of the Second World War. That's the statistics, 1 out of 3. Now that's horrific enough. Unbelievable when you think about it. And maybe you can understand, not that this ever excuses it, but you kind of understand the barbarity of it. There were times of war, 20 million Russians had died. But 1 out of 5 young women goes to college to get an education and experiences sexual assault at the hands of a student? What is that? And the answer is simple. We have created a culture where men are trained to see women as there to be sexually exploited. That's what they're there for. A woman isn't someone with her own dreams and her own ambitions. A woman is there with a vagina and with breasts, and she's there to sexually titillate you. She exists for you to get her drunk at a frat house party and whatever. And she wants it. It's so dangerous when we create a world based purely on exploitation. And then it leads to other things. How many women hate themselves just for the 2 most natural processes that affects every living organism? The 2 most natural things we do as people, the 2 most natural things are A, eat, and B, age. Every woman I know virtually hates themselves for eating and aging. You know, I'll sit with women who come to me for counseling, they sit there with their husbands, and their mascara is running down their faces as they're telling me about, the pain of their marriage. And often they're in a platonic marriage. By the way, platonic marriages in America are, no one can really agree, but it's at least 1 out of 5, some people say 1 out of 3. Young couples having no sex. And a woman will sit there telling me what it's like to be a naked woman in bed near your husband, and he won't touch you. So I'll ask her about her sexual history. And it's amazing. Any question, instant answer. Oh, I lost my virginity at 14, and this happened. And how old are you? How dare you? The chutzpah. How dare you get personal like that? You ever see a woman on her birthday? You know it's her birthday because she's like moping around, happy birthday. What makes it happy? We have made women hate themselves for aging. It's unbelievable. Do you realize that aging means you're still flippin' alive? You know what a blessing that is, to still be alive? Marilyn Monroe did not age. She died tragically. Michael Jackson, the day he died, what a tragedy. We have made women into creatures that will assault their own bodies. It's astonishing. If you would have told me, I knew when I started writing about relationships 25 years ago, I knew that women put foreign objects into their breasts to make them larger. I was wondering, are we going to go down soon there'll be like these Spanish torture things where you stretch a woman's legs to make her taller. But if you would have told me that we would create an entire industry, billion-dollar industry, of women taking a needle and sticking it into their head, I wouldn't have believed it. So no, no one is going to take a needle and shove it into their head. It's just not going to happen. So here I am on a Canadian TV show a number of years ago when I launched one of my books, and the TV host. Now, the art of being a television guest is this. You have to really read the facial expressions of the host, because a host has an IFB in their ear, and there's 2 kinds of breaks in television. There's a hard break, which is, They have to go to a commercial no matter what. They are going out. And then there's a floating break that they can take voluntarily. Now, you don't know which is which. So if they ask you a question and it could be a rhetorical question, you make them look really bad when they have to, they get cut off in mid-sentence, and they're not going to have you back. You're there to make the host look good, which is the way it should be. It's their show. You can disagree, you can argue, but... So this woman says to me, Canadian TV host, beautiful woman, probably about early 50s, and she says to me, so Shmuley, this latest book is a radical departure from your own, which is, I'm wondering why you wrote it. And I'm looking at her eyebrows. Question? Statement? Rhetorical question? Move your face, please! If it's a question, you go, I'm wondering why you wrote it. If it's not, you say, I'm wondering why you wrote it. Just give me something! But she couldn't, because from her hairline down, she was immobile, dead. See, that's the thing. Even if you put foreign objects into your breasts, okay. That's your choice. I'm not here to judge. But there's a difference with Botox. The difference is, it was the first time ever that a cosmetic procedure got in the way of a woman's personality. Made it impossible for her to be fully expressive, and we still adopted it. I believe that women today have become one of the most self-hating groups in the entire world. To look in a mirror and to mostly hate what you see is not healthy. And there's this billions and billion-dollar industries about how to of course we're supposed to be healthier. Of course we should watch what we eat. But we shouldn't hate who we are. Once upon a time, if you go to any of the great museums, and I love taking my children, it's another important part of parenting. I love taking my children to the great museums of the world. So we've been to the Uffizi. We go to the Met every Saturday night after Shabbat because it's open till 9 o'clock. Shabbat ends in the winter months at about 5:30. I've taken them to all these great museums, and you always see these very plump women who were painted by the great masters, especially Rembrandt. That is a far cry from today's stick-thin, emaciated scarecrow look that is the new standard of female beauty. So I always wondered, what changed? My theory is this. That television was discovered by a man named Philo Farnsworth, I believe. He was a Mormon, tinkered in electronics. He was a farmer, and he used to plow his field diagonally and horizontally. And then it struck him, because of these two interests, electronics and farming, that if he could create a signal of lines that intersected, horizontal and vertical, he could transmit a visual image based on pixels. What is a pixel? A pixel are those tiny dots of the intersecting lines of horizontal and today we have a lot of pixels, so we have 4K HD, and back then it was much more rudimentary. It suddenly struck me that in a visual age where women are judged entirely by what we see, age of television, age of magazines, that women are expected to look linear. That's why we want these women who have no curves, no body fat at all, and they have to be very, very linear. Because today, men make love with their eyes, and to the eyes, thin is in. But once upon a time, before the visual age, when men made love with their hands, when they were lovers with their hands, to the hands, meat is neat. I mean, what is more pleasurable, to make love to a bag of bones and a rib cage, or to someone with soft and supple flesh? So we've kind of taken things to such an extreme. We've become extremists. And all of this comes from the exploitation of the human person for someone else's end. A woman doesn't only exist to look beautiful to her husband or to men. That's not the only reason a woman exists. It's great to be attractive, it's great to look attractive, but attraction is a holistic concept. It comes from a woman's mind. Once upon a time, I was asked in England to host, actually it's a Canadian-owned show called Fashion TV. So this goes back 15 years. Anyway, I just published my book, The Jewish Guide to Adultery. And they asked me to host this show in England for the London Fashion Week. Guest host, Rabbi Shmuley, thought it'd be interesting. So my wife says to me, there's no way you're going around those models by yourself. I'm coming with you. I said, I expected as much. It's okay. So they come to me, they say to me, there's a young woman, she's 18, number one supermodel in the world. She's coming out of her dressing room, be there with the camera, and you're going to interview her. So I didn't know who it was. She comes out of her dressing room, and I recognize her instantly. I'm not going to say her name because I'm not here to be disparaging. I put the microphone in her face and I say to her, and she was beautiful, beautiful woman. I put the microphone in her face and I say to her, what's it like being born a genetic celebrity without any concomitant need to develop inner dimensions of your personality? And honestly, she looks at the camera, looks at me, and she goes, huh? Two things happened at that moment. I got fired. The director cut it, and that was it. I was done. I was finished. I was never going to be a fashion TV host anymore. And the second thing that happened was that she became instantly unattractive. Not ugly, but when I saw that she had nothing to say. I mean, did she ever think about the question of, if you're born beautiful, are there other aspects that you are going to develop? Or do you just trade always off your looks? And she had never thought about that. And it was astonishing. Conversely, I was once given a meeting with Barbara Streisand, 5-hour meeting, me and a friend. She wanted to do a television project about something that I was working on. She came out in her hair rollers, wearing a bathrobe. So the great star looking, not made up. But I got to tell you, through the conversation, she spoke to us for 5 hours. The stories were so fascinating, so interesting, that as it went on, honestly, she became radiant and beautiful. And she became that star just through the force of her personality. And every study shows that the sexiest quality of any woman is self-confidence. To walk with a certain self-confidence. But the culture is designed to rob us of that self-confidence. So conversation number 1. Who do you want to be? Conversation number 2. Be a blessing and never a burden. Conversation number 3. All I want to know is that you want to know. Intellectual curiosity. Couldn't care less about your grades. By the way, for those of you who disagree with me and think it's all about grades, most of the entrepreneurs I know who've changed the world dropped out of school. Larry Ellison dropped out of school. Steve Jobs dropped out of school. Bill Gates dropped out of school. So how could they be so successful? They were intellectually curious. Mark Zuckerberg dropped out of school. I'm not saying you should drop out of school. I'm just saying, stop thinking it's about school. It's about intellectual curiosity. Conversation number 4, what I just said. Believe in yourself. Be self-confident, which really means identify your gift. Know what your particular gift is. Don't ever copy or ape someone else's gift. You know how you discover what your gift is? Mostly by speaking to your friends. You sit with your friends, you say, why do you like me? Like, why, what is the basis of our friendship? We spend so much time. And they'll probably say to you, you know why? You have an incredible gift for empathy. Or you have an ability to lift up your whole environment. I mean, they will tell you what your gift is. Then work on that gift, develop that gift. And because it's late, I'm going to end with this. The 10th conversation. Embrace hunger. Our entire culture is designed to satisfy every need and to scratch every itch. So if you're a man who's feeling horny, here's some porn and you can masturbate. You're feeling a little bit depressed, here's a credit card, go and buy something. The number one way that women deal with depression and unhappiness is the impulse purchase, which is why our homes are filled with so much junk. Because you're buying things you don't even care about. It just satisfies an instant need. Fast food, whatever it is, our culture is designed to ensure we never have to hunger. And the net result is that we live lives where we don't know how to truly yearn for things that are supposed to be a lifelong yearning. The person who embraces hunger not only lives a healthier life physically, because they don't always eat when they feel they're hungry, they actually live a life of intellectual, emotional, and erotic adventure. Like a lot of people come to me, they say to me, why did God allow the Holocaust? If God is good and God is just, why did he allow the Holocaust? And they forget, in looking for that one answer, that Judaism never said that it is a religion that can give you every answer to life's most difficult questions. Only a fraudulent religion claims that. A real religion doesn't teach you what the answers are. It helps you phrase the questions. Because answering that question is a lifelong journey of exploration as you deepen your intimate relationship with God. And it's a very troubling question. Elie Wiesel was asked that question when I hosted him the first time 25 years ago in Oxford. A young non-Jewish student stood up in front of 1,000 other students, started to cry and said, Professor Wiesel, why did God allow the Holocaust? And Wiesel famously said, brilliant answer, moving. He said, I don't mean to offend you, but it is an immoral question. For if I answer it, you will sleep easier tonight. It'll be like, why did 6 million Jews die? For this reason. Oh, that's why. Okay, so there it is. Let's move on to the next question. We have to be countercultural. Our culture is designed to address every need, satisfy every urge, when really you're supposed to hunger. Last night I spoke about the Jewish laws of family purity, mikvah, where a man hungers for his wife, a wife hungers for her husband for a few days out of every month. Now think about that. That's so countercultural. In our age, if you want to have sex, you just have it. But that's why sex has been reduced to 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Once a week. Or porn. The essence of porn is to satisfy this urge, when really it's supposed to build up. A lot of husbands say to me when they travel, I would never cheat on my wife, but I look at all the porn movies that are in every... Marriott is a Mormon-owned company. They had this scandal a few years ago. A lot of Mormons in Utah, and I'm very close to the Mormon church. I speak there a lot, speak for Mormon organizations a lot. A lot of the Mormons went to the Marriott family and said, why are you guys putting porn in your, it's a big source of revenue. I said, don't you want to live by your values? And a lot of husbands say to me, I would never cheat, but I look at all this porn stuff. I said, why? I said, well, I'm not made of wood. I'm supposed to be away for a week. And I said, yes, that's the whole point. You're supposed to hunger for a week so you come back and ravish your wife. That's sexual passion. But we allow all of our sexual steam to escape. Sometimes you're supposed to hunger. Our kids especially want everything satisfied right now, instantaneously, this second. They cry and scream and we give in, and we destroy them by doing that, not because we spoil them and not because we show that a tantrum is rewarded. We ruin them because we show that hunger is not part of their upbringing. That satiation is what life is about, when it's not. Anyone who truly succeeds at anything in life is someone who perpetually hungers. The husband and wife who have a sexually alive marriage are people who can never get enough of each other's bodies. The ones who have a bad marriage are those who've been there, done that, explored that, now I need someone else. People who are alive in their religion come every week, hear the Torah reading, and they don't think, I know that story about Moses and the Exodus and the frogs, I've heard that before. No, they go much deeper into it. It's amazing. The Parsha of the week, honestly, provides me so many new insights every single year. It just opens my mind. The person who hungers does not live horizontally, they live vertically. In other words, our culture is designed for all of us to live horizontally, to expand horizontally. So how do we expand? Well, quite literally, we stop growing vertically and we expand horizontally. But even we place ourselves at the circle of center of possessions, and we expand by having more and more things. So you have one house now, 2 houses, 3 houses, 1 car, 4 cars, 5 cars. And you feel more successful the more you expand horizontally. The more things you own, the more property you have. That is the definition of success, horizontal expansion. In Judaism, the successful person is he or she who expands vertically. They go higher in understanding and deeper. They go deeper into their relationships. In marriage, they start having deeper conversations, more erotic conversations, more romantic conversations, more intelligent conversations. They peel back so many of the layers of their spouse, and that's why there's no boredom. And they go higher vertically. They're always thinking deeper and deeper about the celestial aspects of life. They're not satisfied with some pat responses. In other words, rather than just gaining facts, they gain wisdom. So I'll end with one famous Jewish saying. What is the difference between the smart man and the wise man? And here I use smart and wise as a metaphor. For the smart man expands horizontally. He's smart, he's cunning, he knows how to do great deals, he knows how to buy and sell, he's smart. Versus the wise man. What's the difference between the smart man and the wise man? The smart man can extricate himself from situations into which the wise man would never have gotten himself into. We think we're so smart, and we teach our children success is everything, do well at school, and get a great job and earn money. And later when your child is unhappy, or in a relationship they can't sustain, or in a bad marriage, you need to use all of your maneuvering as a parent to help guide them to get out of that situation. But you unwittingly helped put them there in the first place. You told them that everything was about horizontal expansion. Satisfy every need, and instead of telling them, life has a spiritual quality, has a spiritual dimension. Bringing them to shul, teaching them prayer. All those things that are not useful in being a success in life today, so we don't use them. How is it helpful to come to shul? It's very helpful to go to an extra class at night and get another degree. But we're not mastering life. And that's why in the West, we are really growing macrocosmically. The West is expanding, thank God. Even after the recession, economies are better now. I know that Canada has its issues with oil, those damn Saudis. But the world is doing better, thank God. Standard of living generally is rising in most countries. But the quality of our personal lives is deplorable. It's abysmal. Singles dating for 10 years, not being able to find anyone. In the Jewish community, the issue isn't even intermarriage anymore. When I was a kid, everyone talked about intermarriage, assimilation. Now, the issue is lack of marriage. Nobody's marrying. There's no Jewish kids. It's also true in Europe. Why is there such a problem in France and Belgium with these debates about immigration? These are all countries that don't have their own babies. So they're dependent on immigration policies, sometimes in vast numbers, without fully integrating immigrants. We all believe in immigrants. We're all immigrants. Without fully integrating them into the body politic, because the numbers are so big, because there's just no children. So we're making more and more money, and we're not just, our relationships are suffering. So in the final analysis, I always say, and I hope this saying will stay with you, are you really a success in life if the people who mean the most to you think the least of you? Are you a success in life if the people who mean the most to you think the least of you? Your bosses love you, your friends love you, but your own kids don't. You're not a success. Julian Lennon famously wrote about his father. He said his father was like, and I love John Lennon, I love his music. It was almost a divine quality, a spiritual quality to his reaching for something higher in his music. But his own son said, well, my father was doing all that. All we are saying is give peace a chance. He was abandoning his mother and him and didn't give them any money for years. They were on the breadline. You can't do that. You can't save the world and neglect the people who are the most important to you. So, thank you all for coming out on a Sunday morning. Please stay in touch at rabbishmuley.com. We have, thank God, 250,000 people on Twitter. We have 150,000 likes on Facebook. It's Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Or go to my mailing list, shmuley.com. I write 3 columns a week. Would love to have you read them. Love to stay in touch. And it's been a pleasure to be here, to be reunited after Los Angeles in the musk-tamer pastures of northern Canada. Or
this is southern
That's southern Canada, right.
I had to learn that too.
Right. Okay. And God bless you all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We hope that you all come back. We're going to try to do more of these things. Rabbi Brown and I are committed to doing learning once a month with families on other Jewish topics and subjects. I can't always promise we'll have a scholar such as Rabbi Boteach, who might be stuck with me or Rabbi Brown. Stuck with me. Rabbi Brown's an eminent scholar. Anyhow, thank you so much for being here. Your kids are still in
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Shmuley, I need the microphone.
Yes. I thought it was like a. Oh, yeah, the sworn man.